Imagine you wake up one morning and you just don't feel like doing anything. Not the good kind of rest, the hollow kind. You scroll through your phone, you eat without tasting, you move through the day like a ghost wearing your own face. Now, here's the question that should unsettle you. Is that emptiness accidental, or is it what happens when something essential in you stops pushing forward? Friedrich Nietzsche spent his entire philosophical life chasing the answer to that question. And the answer he found wasn't comfortable. It wasn't a self-help formula or a motivational poster. It was something older, stranger, and far more honest about what it means to be alive. If you've ever heard the phrase will to power and assumed it was about domination or control, stay with me, because what Nietzsche actually meant might change the way you see every single choice you make. That's exactly what we're going to unpack today. Nietzsche was born in 1844 in Prussia, in a Germany still stitching itself together as a modern nation. He was a child prodigy, appointed professor of classical philology at the University of Basel at just 24, before he even finished his doctorate. That detail matters because Nietzsche wasn't a rebel without training. He knew the ancient Greeks intimately. He understood what European civilization had built. And precisely because he understood it so deeply, he saw the cracks no one else wanted to name. He watched the industrialized world celebrate progress, while quietly hollowing out every source of meaning it claimed to protect. He watched Christianity lose its grip on European culture and saw that most people had no idea what to replace it with. He called this the death of God. Not a theological statement, but a cultural diagnosis. The scaffolding of meaning was collapsing, and humanity was sleepwalking toward what he feared most. A life without genuine striving, without creative tension, without what he called the will to power. And if you want to follow Nietzsche's thinking wherever it leads, including ideas we haven't touched yet on this channel, subscribing to Philosophia Laser means you'll be here when those explorations of power, meaning, and the human condition continue. So what exactly is the will to power? Here's where almost everyone gets it wrong. The will to power is not the desire to dominate other people. It is not ambition in the boardroom sense, not the hunger to control or manipulate. Nietzsche was pointing at something more fundamental. The drive in every living thing to express, expand, and overcome itself. Think about a musician who already plays beautifully but keeps pushing towards something harder, something more precise, something they can barely reach yet. They're not doing it to defeat anyone. They're doing it because something inside them demands more of themselves. That's the will to power. Or think about a scientist who could publish safe, acceptable research but instead follows a question that might make her colleagues uncomfortable, that might overturn her own earlier conclusions. That restlessness, that insistence on greater truth, even at personal cost. Nietzsche would recognize that immediately. The will to power is the force that makes life feel like it's moving, like it's becoming something, rather than simply persisting. Now flip it. Think about someone who gave up on a dream not because they genuinely chose a different path, but because they were afraid. Not afraid of failure exactly, afraid of the effort, the exposure, the risk of wanting something fully and visibly. Nietzsche had a name for the psychology that produces that kind of retreat. He called it ressentiment, a French word he used deliberately, the festering resentment of people who have suppressed their own will to power and then reframed that suppression as virtue. They tell themselves they didn't want it anyway. They build an identity around not wanting, and quietly they begin to resent those who still do want, who still push, who still risk. The will to power, for Nietzsche, is not optional. Suppress it, and it doesn't disappear. It curdles. Not everyone found this vision liberating. Nietzsche's contemporaries and later thinkers pushed back hard. Utilitarians argued that what drives human behavior is the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain, not some abstract creative impulse. For them, Nietzsche's framework was dangerously vague and potentially elitist. Why celebrate the striving of exceptional individuals when society needs cooperation, fairness, and the greatest good for the greatest number? From a different angle, Marxist thinkers saw the will to power as a convenient philosophy for those already privileged, a way of glorifying individual drive while ignoring the structural forces that make striving impossible for millions of people. And existentialists like Sartre, while deeply influenced by Nietzsche, complicated the picture further. Yes, we are condemned to choose and to create ourselves, but that freedom is terrifying and often paralyzing in ways Nietzsche's more heroic framing didn't fully account for. These tensions are real. They matter. Nietzsche wasn't building a political program, he was diagnosing a psychological condition, but the line between the two has always been dangerously thin. Here's where this stops being philosophy and starts being your life. We live in a moment of extraordinary suppressed will to power, not because people lack ambition. If anything, the pressure to perform is deafening. But there's a difference between performing ambition and genuinely striving towards something you've chosen from the inside. Most productivity culture sells you the first while quietly killing the second. Optimization, metrics, personal branding. These are the tools of a life managed from the outside in. Nietzsche's challenge is more radical. What do you actually want to overcome in yourself? Not what your resume needs, not what your timeline should look like. What internal resistance, what comfortable limitation are you choosing not to push past? In relationships, in creative work, in the ideas you allow yourself to seriously consider. The will to power shows up as the difference between growing and simply coping. And the honest question Nietzsche forces you to ask is whether the life you're living is an expression of something genuine in you or a very polished version of giving up. Here's what stays with me about Nietzsche. He wasn't telling you to be great in the way the world defines greatness. He was asking whether you are being true to the force that makes you specifically alive, whether you are meeting your own resistance or decorating it. The will to power isn't a promise that striving leads to success. It's a warning that not striving leads to something worse than failure. So I'll leave you with this. Think of one place in your life right now where you know you've been retreating. Not resting, retreating. What would it look like to push toward it instead? And if questions like this one keep pulling at you, there's more waiting for you right here on this channel.